Welcome to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Terry Betsakis, and this is where we talk honestly about midlife, hormones, mindset, and becoming who you want to be next. Welcome to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. I'm your host, Terry Betsakis, and this week I'm talking with Annie Barry. Annie is an accredited practicing dietitian with over 20 years of experience, a food and wine lover, and someone who genuinely believes that willpower is not the reason most women over 40 struggle with their weight. Annie runs All Round Wellness, where she helps women in perimenopause lose weight, manage symptoms, and feel like themselves again, without giving up their favourite food or cooking separate meals for the family. Her approach is built on practical systems rather than restriction, because she knows strategies that worked in your 20s and 30s simply don't cut it anymore. Annie is passionate about giving women the tools and confidence to take back control of their health for good. Welcome, Annie. Such a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Can you share a little about yourself and what you do and how you support women in perimenopause?
So I am a dietitian and I've been working for 20 years this year. Crazy to think.
Wow,
But
congratulations.
thank you. It's a bit crazy when you think about it. Time goes quickly, but certainly what I will say is probably it's been the last 5 to 6 years that I've become increasingly passionate about how helping midlife women. So going through that perimenopause, menopausal transition. So as a dietitian, I run programs that focus on how to, I guess, nourish their body into good health rather than starve yourself skinny.
Yeah.
But also making sure we have a really well-rounded approach that looks at things like mindset, but also lifestyle systems, habits. Our client base is busy, they don't have a lot of time, they need things that are going to work for them. So I guess I base a lot of my strategies around habits and systems and what's realistic for people at that time.
Yeah, awesome. Now, you've mentioned to me about underfueling as the cause of overeating. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So for a lot of my clients, they have a history of yo-yo dieting. So they might have struggled with their weight in the long term and have tried all the bits and pieces. And often when it comes to our approach around weight loss is that we're always thinking about less. How do I eat less? How do I do less dessert, do less wine? It's all about removing things. And what can happen is that we end up going too light. And what I mean by that is that we're creating meals that are what we think are weight loss friendly. So looking at something really light, but ultimately what we're creating is a meal that's not going to last in terms of satisfaction and keeping your appetite and blood sugars steady. And so at some point during the day, we often get that rebound. And often I find it sort of is from that 3 o'clock onwards period where people manage okay for breakfast and lunch. And then that sort of hunger and those cravings really hit around 3 p.m. And then you're sort of chasing your tail after that. So it's more about that idea of underfueling rebounds into overeating later in the day.
I guess that's where the after dinner snacking comes into it. Do you find that?
Yeah, it's sort of from 3 p.m. onwards. So I laugh with my clients about some of the patterns around raiding the kids' lunchbox snacks or the colleagues' chocolate drawers.
What are the favorite go-tos from the kids' lunchbox?
Often it's anything that people can find at that stage, given that they're super peckish. So whatever the kids' snacks are around, or knowing which colleague has chocolate in their drawer at work is always important.
I love it. I actually find the same sort of thing, which, when I look back way before I learned anything about nutrition, I was like, yeah, that's kind of stuff I did too. So it's very relatable. It makes total sense, doesn't it?
I think for sure. It happens to us all.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the strategies that you help them with, in order to combat that?
Yeah, so the first things that I look at are meal structure and meal balance. So I have a look at how people are structuring their meals across the day. One common pattern that I see with my clients is, as I said, that underfueling earlier in the day. So breakfast might be, grabbing the kids' toast crusts, having some coffees and rushing out the door. And I think that contributes to that overeating later on. So we have a look at meal schedule and timing. So everybody's a little bit different, and I'm not set in terms of what this looks like, but a fairly common pattern that works for a lot of my clients is having that breakfast, lunch, a planned afternoon snack, and then their evening meal. So we might have a look at structure and find a timing that works for them as far as their meals go. The next thing is having a look at the meal balance. So making sure that when we're creating a meal, this is something that's going to keep you going for 3 hours. If you're getting hungry an hour after your meal, then it probably suggests that it's not as well balanced as it could be.
Yeah.
So the emphasis that I put on for a lot of my clients are particularly around making sure we're getting enough protein, which a lot of people know because protein's having its moment in the spotlight at the moment. That's very
It's kind of
popular.
queen on socials and your plate, isn't it?
Totally. But yes, there is reason for it. It's
Yeah.
just that sometimes I think other nutrients like fiber get a little bit lost because we're all thinking about protein. But yes, certainly making sure that our meal has a really good balance of protein and fiber to make sure that that's going to carry people through. So first two things I look at is meal structure and then meal balance. Because then you might find the same thing, but for a lot of my clients, they come in telling me that snacking is their problem. But
No.
when we actually look at it, it's meal structure and meal balance that needs the work first. Is that something that you've experienced?
It absolutely is. Tell me if this sounds familiar to you. Breakfast either doesn't happen, or like you said, it's toast crusts, or you know, if they're lucky, a shake on the run, and half the time the shake just is mushed up banana and milk. Um, so breakfast in most common times is skipped. Lunch may or may not happen. Then there's coffee and a cookie that goes on there, about 3 more cups of coffee later in the afternoon, a coffee while you're cooking dinner, another coffee, and then lots of snacks afterwards, is something that I see quite common. What about, I'm not sure how familiar that is for your clients as well.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes sense for a couple of reasons. One, as we said, that underfueling. So we're looking for things like caffeine and sugar to give us a boost. But
Mm,
also for a lot of our women, if they're experiencing the symptoms of perimenopause, they're not sleeping well. So their energy levels already aren't great. And so there can be that temptation to lean a little bit heavier onto things like caffeine and sugar just to kind of get you through the day.
yeah, correct. I find that we also were raised in an era that eat less, need to be super skinny, eat less, eat less. So a lot of women who were raised in the 70s and 80s, and even in the 90s, it kind of
90s.
pitted into the start of the 90s as well, where it's a real push to eat less, eat less. So it's very hard now I know for myself as well, when I was in my younger years thinking about eating more food, as a person who's got a reformed eating disorder, I had anorexia as a teenager. I really struggled with the whole eat food, which is why I ended up in this industry. It's very hard for women to unlearn what they've known for decades,
Mm.
and it's hard for them to get around their head. I don't know, like how you feel about that, but that's what I have found.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. It's decades of conditioning. And for a lot of my clients, they might have had experience with or challenges with their weight from a really young age. Some of my clients have been on diets since the age of 12. And so to then sort of get to this point in their 40s and 50s and sort of realizing, okay, what I've been doing in the past hasn't been working. I need to do something differently, but I don't know what that is because they've never experienced that. So you're right. It is really hard to undo sort of those decades of habits and that default thinking, always thinking about doing less. But it is actually really refreshing to be thinking about the things to be doing more of. Thinking about increasing protein and fiber, more fruits and veggies, more water. It's a bit of a shift in that thinking and can be really refreshing.
Do you find that your clients um, are almost grateful for the extra food, or I guess would be grateful?
Yes. So that's the thing because sometimes people come in with that resignation that to lose weight, I have to be hungry and I need to suffer, whereas in actual fact, when we're actually nourishing you really well and creating really satisfying meals, you're feeling more satisfied and less hungry than what you have, but still able to get results. So it's a game changer.
Yeah, it's a real big aha for them, isn't it? Like that. Oh my God, I'm eating more and I'm losing. What?
Yeah, but it doesn't compute, right? It doesn't make sense because of all that conditioning about needing to eat less to
Mm.
get results. But it is just about fueling smarter. That's all.
Yeah, correct. And do you find that their stress levels and their sleep improve by giving them more food and nourishing better?
Often. I mean, not always the cases because there's lots of reasons why they might be sleeping poorly or struggling with stress. But
Uh-huh.
yes, it certainly can help. Certainly, I had a client recently who said that she was sleeping much better. We'd actually sort of increased her carbohydrate intake. She'd previously been on sort of keto and low carb diet, so we increased her carbohydrate intake and a couple of things. And yeah, she said the difference was really noticeable with her sleep.
Yeah, cool. And how do you feel about specific titled diets as compared to the individual diet?
I probably feel mixed things because it probably depends on the title of the diet in terms of how I feel about it. No, I do think that there's some reasonable programs out there that are teaching reasonable ways to eat. But the issue, I guess, is that everybody's slightly different, and an element of personalization can be really helpful, I think, in terms of making sure that you've got a system that works for you. So the issue, I think, sometimes with the larger programs is that it's sort of we try to morph ourselves to fit in with the diet rather than creating a diet or a pattern that works for you. I guess I sit on the fence. Is that there's some sort of titled diets that I probably wouldn't recommend. I think there's some reasonable ones out there, but it really is just about being able to make sure that there's some flexibility for you to make it your own.
I love that. I love that we have that shared opinion of that, because I feel that it's important for people to have that consistency across the board where, yes, you may follow a specific diet. However, you don't necessarily need to stick to it so rigidly if it's not
Mm.
suitable for you and your body type. I share exactly the same viewpoint on that. I think it is very personalized. How do you feel with regards to taking somatic type into account?
Actually, it's not a lot that I know about, to be honest. It's something that you would know far more than me.
Okay, that's fair. I love the honesty out there. That's great. Um, I'll talk about somatic type in a podcast that I do on my own, but just very briefly, it just depending on whether a person is an endomorph, mesomorph, or an ectomorph, which is just three different types of body type.
Yeah.
Think marathon runner, soccer player, and say sumo wrestler. Different body shaped, different sized muscle lengths and skeletal systems. Some do better with higher fats, and others do better with higher carbs. That's why I guess some people can eat carbs till the cows come home and never gain weight, and someone else sniffs it and gains weight. So it just
Yeah.
depends on body type as well. But that is definitely something that is more looked at in the fitness industry. So yeah, I totally agree there.
Yeah, look, and I guess I always kind of see things on a sliding scale. In that way, is
Yeah,
that some people do better with certain types of macro splits. A lot of my
yeah.
clients have a sense about that by the time that they get to me. Maybe not into, maybe not to the level that you would understand it, but they understand what foods might work for them a little bit better versus what doesn't. So it is just about sort of finding where people sit on that sliding scale. Yeah, I agree.
On a personal level, how did you get into the industry?
Really good question. I wish I had a really wonderful story, Terry, but actually, I kind of fell into it. Thanks to my school guidance counselor who was sitting there with me in year 12, who was like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know." She's like, "What subjects do you like?" I'm like, "Maths, I like sports." And then she said, "Oh, well, there's nutrition and dietetics as a course." And I was like, "Sounds good." And that is literally how I ended up here. But
Awesome. That's a great
not
story. What do you mean? You had no guidance and someone
It
helped
was
you get there. So that's
accidental.
awesome. You did mention
Accidental.
that sorry, go on.
Well, it was accidental, but I'm very grateful for that accident.
Well, even if it was accidental, God, I can't even talk now. Even if it was accidental and you fell into this industry, if you found you didn't enjoy it, you wouldn't have continued it. But 20 years, you've obviously gotten some passion out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And particularly what I will say, yeah, is the last sort of 5 to 6 years where I've really specialized in weight management for women in their 40s and 50s. Like this is something that I found that I'm absolutely passionate about and just love working in this area.
What led you? Oh, you actually guided me into that question. What led you to start specializing in the last 5 to 6 years? What triggered you?
I mean, I've always enjoyed working in weight management because I love looking at the behaviors and the habits side of things when it comes to food and eating. And I think also I was really conscious as a younger dietitian that things were changing for my clients in their 40s and 50s, but I actually didn't have a really good understanding about what was happening. And it was, I think, learning a little bit more about perimenopause and the symptoms. When somebody told me that joint pain was a symptom of perimenopause, I was like, gosh, like there's so much I don't know here. And that caused me to do a bit of a deep dive. And then my mind was just like, oh my goodness, why are we not talking about this?
Yeah,
But this was, 6 years ago, and perimenopause really wasn't on the radar. And thank
certainly
goodness
not.
last couple of years, it's now something that's mainstream and we're talking about it at long last. But yeah,
Mm.
it just blew my mind that this was such a significant transition for women and no one was talking about it and there was no information and no support.
Isn't it incredible how we could go our whole lives and we hear this word menopause and we find out from our mothers or grandmothers or aunts or older women, oh, yeah, you'll go through this transition, you'll stop having a period and you'll get some hot flushes. And that's pretty much all
Yes.
we get told. And then I've studied women's hormones and health and nutrition for a number of years. This is my 16th year, I think I am, in the industry. And I have studied so many different aspects of it. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, that I actually even heard the word perimenopause. And I was like, what? And I'm an educated person in the field. So imagine the average lady who just goes on life without really studying. It's pretty scary, isn't it?
Terrifying. And yeah, same here in terms of my idea of menopause was period stop and maybe some hot flushes. But it's also what was represented in movies as well. It was sort of an older lady who'd be fanning herself and we'd be like, menopause,
Yeah.
But actually understanding what the transition is now, it's just mind blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I feel I feel with regards to if we, join into a movement together, all of us who work in the industry, and educate our younger ladies as well, perhaps they won't go through the struggles that my generation is going through at the moment. I don't know how do you coach, well, do you mentor people that are in the younger years as well?
Yeah, yeah. So I do have most of my clients sort of sit in the 40s to 50s age bracket, but I am seeing people in their later 30s coming through or 30s coming through saying, I want to be proactive. I know this thing's coming. What can I do to set myself up for success, which is amazing. And I also have women at the other end who are postmenopausal who are starting to realize that actually I can do things. If I'm proactive with my nutrition and exercise, I can make change. And so that's great as well. Also understanding that even if you might have missed the early boat, it's not too late.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. What a great point to raise. Now, for all our listeners that are out there, what are some of the tips that you can give them that they can implement? Sitting at home listening, it's all great for us to be sharing our experiences, but I guess they want to get something out of our conversation. So, what are some of the things that you can share with them that they can implement? If this podcast is resonating, I'm Coach Terry Batsakis, a nutrition, mindset, and health coach for women navigating perimenopause and midlife. I support women in managing hormonal symptoms, feel more at home in their bodies, and move through this phase with confidence and clarity. If you need support navigating midlife, you can find out more about working with me at terrybatsakis.com.au.
Yeah, so I think to just trickle back to some of the things that I mentioned before was that if you're sitting there feeling like snacking is one of the things that's holding you back or is a big issue, the first thing, have a look at your meal structure and how you're fueling. Because I think, Terry, you described the day before where breakfast can get missed. Lunch often is grab and go in between meetings and work. So what I would do is firstly have a look at your fueling. And are you skipping meals? Are you eating regularly? Because that is often a real game changer in terms of just giving you energy to go through the day.
Mm.
Next thing, I use a really basic plate model framework for a lot of my clients where we divide our plate up into three and we're looking for half a plate of veggies and salad, a quarter of our plate of protein, and a quarter of a plate of our high fiber carbohydrates or whole grains. And that's, I know it's hard without the visual. Hopefully that made sense. But that's a really nice framework to use, particularly for your lunches and dinners, to make sure that we're ticking the boxes in terms of protein, getting some veggie in, getting some good fiber and some fuel in. And my last tip is plan an afternoon snack. So again, most of the time people are thinking, go less, go light, I shouldn't be snacking. So if they don't plan something or they don't take something to work with them, then they're starving at 3 o'clock and then they're looking around the workplace for things that they can grab. So having a strategic afternoon snack can be really helpful sometimes to get you through between that sort of lunch and dinner bracket. Because for a lot of my clients who have kids and kids with after school sport, sometimes they're not eating their evening meal until quite late. And so it's a big gap between lunch and dinner. So have a strategic snack in the afternoon, plan for it, and be okay with eating it is my advice.
And what would that snack look like?
Good question. And I think it varies a lot in terms of preference, what's portable as well. So often we do encourage my clients to try and incorporate some fresh food as part of their snack if they can. So by fresh food, I mean some fruit or veggies.
Mhm.
Then we want something, and a piece of fruit's great if you're looking for just something light just to get you through. But if you're hungry, we need to then pair it with something else, something that's sort of maybe protein and fiber containing to help pull you through. So that I use really commonly with my clients might be something like some high protein yogurt, fruit, and maybe some nuts or granola or something crunchy on top. The baby bell cheeses are quite popular with my clients because they're nice and portable. So they might have a piece of fruit and a baby bell. Some of my clients make mini snack size smoothies if they're at home and they really enjoy that. But I think also often for my clients, if they're hungry in the afternoon, I'll encourage a slightly heavier snack. Sometimes I might encourage having a slice of whole grain toast with some topping or some whole grain crackers and some cottage cheese and tomato. Something that's actually going to keep them feeling full. Otherwise, they end up just having 400 light snacks. So if you have a piece of fruit, then you have some rice cakes, take rice cakes, and then have something else. Whereas you may as well have had one sort of heavier snack. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great for everybody who's listening to just have some guidance, and that's a great option because if they are hungry, they're like, "Oh, I'm listening to you, and a baby bell and a banana is just not going to cut it." So, yeah, it's really refreshing for those people who need the extra fuel to really just increase that portion. I know I deal with a lot of women who are up very early and tend to go to bed later than they should, as much as I'm encouraging them to get to bed a little bit earlier. But they're having such long days. And so, really, three structured meals and a piece of fruit in the afternoon is just not going to cut it. So,
Yeah.
I, in total agreement with that, I actually encourage a fourth meal,
Mm,
with meal three being that mid afternoon snack, which may or may not look the same as the other meals or it might be a bit smaller. And if they are having a nice distribution across the four, I make sure that like the daily overall amount of food then just gets split between the four in that
yeah.
instance. So listening to you, I'm like, great, we've kind of worded in different ways, but we're basically saying the same thing, which is refreshing for the client so that they know that this is consistent information in the industry.
Absolutely. And look, I guess we also need to say we're talking generally, and we've
Yeah.
said before personalization is important. And so different scenarios might work for different people, but talking generally about my client base, most
Yeah.
are busy, often mums, desk jobs. That's the sort of strategies, I guess, that we often use.
Yeah, I find exactly the same thing. And do you find that, and this is, I guess I probably already know the answer that you're going to give me with this one, but it's more for the purpose of our listeners now that I'm going to ask you this. Do you find that ladies have more structure, say Monday to Friday, and then the weekends kind of turn on their heads a little bit?
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's the same for me as well. It's everybody, probably the same for everybody.
Yeah,
And
me too.
sometimes there's a niceness to having something that's a little bit different or being slightly different to the routine.
Yeah.
It's just more about if it's complete blowout for people is that sometimes what happens is that that can then derail some of their goals. So it is about being able to enjoy the weekend, but perhaps retain a little bit of the structure or the some of the strategies from midweek so that we can have that balance. So um, food for me is really important. I don't want to strip the joy out of eating for people. I don't want people to feel like they can't say yes to a dinner invite on the weekend because they're going to ruin their diet. It is just about figuring out how we work these things in a
Yeah, how
balanced.
important is that? Just to feel kind of like, yeah, I'm normal. I'm like everybody else. I'm not going to miss out.
No, totally. But I've had so many clients who have been on really strict diets in the past, and then socializing becomes a source of anxiety instead of something joyful because they're like, what am I going to eat and how am I going to manage this with my diet? And I think that it's so sad, but it also means that it's unsustainable.
Yeah, correct. Which I guess is why so many people, myself included in the early years, go through yo-yo dieting because there's only so long they can follow something rigid. So I totally agree. With regards to in your bio, when I read out your bio, you were talking about making sure that people enjoy their lifestyle and not have to cook separate meals from their family. Can you talk us through how you communicate that, I guess, with your client base just to help out the listeners so that they can get their heads around it as well?
And I think this is something that comes up quite a lot because for a lot of my clients, they're very time poor. And that's something that comes up right at the start of our discussion. And they've, again, been on diets where they've needed to cook them their own separate diet meals. And again, that hasn't been sustainable. And also, it's not necessarily the behavior, perhaps, that they want to be role modeling for the rest of the family as well. So,
Yeah. Great point.
certainly, well, it comes up quite a lot. And for a lot of my clients, particularly when they have young girls, they're really conscious about the way that they're wanting to not talk about their weight and the way that they want to demonstrate healthy eating. So,
Absolutely.
usually, what I do with my clients is we use that plate model framework. And so a lot of family meals follow that framework. It's just that my clients might need to portion their own meals slightly differently because their needs might be different to their partner or their children. So what we do is we use portion control and we might make some simple substitutions or alterations potentially for some ingredients, but it's going to be really small and it's going to be things that don't take another 4 hours to do. These are really quick couple of minute jobs,
Yeah.
just to
Can you
make
give us
sure
an
that then
example?
once so sometimes what we might do is that there might not be enough vegetables, say, in the particular meal for the whatever they've cooked. Say they've made a pasta bake for the family. There might not be sort of a large enough vegetable serve within that. So they might then throw a side salad or some frozen veggies or a packet of coleslaw mix, on the side just to boost their own veggie component. So really quick things that they can do just to rearrange the portion sizes on their plates.
Yeah,
Um,
great tip.
because I think we've got a lot of reasonable quality convenience products now that we can use. Sure, there's some things in the supermarket that aren't great quality, but we've actually got some really good convenience products. So that's another thing I talk to my clients about is not sort of that feeling guilty about needing to cook absolutely everything from scratch. We can lean on some of those products.
Yeah, how important is that? So, what are some of the things that you suggest if somebody comes to you and says, I'm really time poor, I don't have time to be cooking, what can I do that's really quick and simple? What are some tips that you can give the ladies? Because I'm sure there's some listening out there that go, oh, I haven't got time to do this.
Yes. I sort of think about it like a sliding scale in terms of what you've got time for. So for some of my clients, they might actually be using ready-made meals, whether that be a meal delivery service or they might use frozen meals that you can get from the supermarket, literally things that you don't have to cook. And what we might do is then just slightly boost up the veggie intake and make sure that we're selecting those sorts of meals that are going to be meeting their protein intake and what they need. So people don't even have to cook. We can use those meals as a backup. Or some of my clients are using things like HelloFresh or Marley Spoon,
Yeah.
just as a way to reduce some mental load in terms of thinking about what to cook. And we might just modify that slightly. Or I might look at really kind of quick options. So even just thinking about things that are easy to go at the supermarket. So already marinated proteins or, ready-made soups and toast or chucking some eggs in a wrap with some salad. So there's lots of really quick things that we can do using some of the products from the supermarket. It's just thinking about that spectrum. Is it about having meals that are cooked for you or using a meal delivery kit to reduce the mental load, or utilizing some of those really quick proteins in the supermarket that you can literally just bang some ready-made salads with and away you go. But
Yeah.
also remembering things like eggs on toast, toasties, soup, all of those things, we can make those things work. It doesn't have to be sort of a big complicated meal for it to be effective.
Yeah, isn't it incredible? We're living in a society today where everything's so convenient, and convenient no longer means fast food only. We can
Yes.
even Uber a meal from somewhere that's quite healthy. It doesn't have to be, something that's super processed and etc. So we're very lucky we live in an era, I guess, that there is so much option out there. We just need to kind of think laterally, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. You framed that really nicely. And I think, the convenience options, ready-made meal options are so different from when I was growing up. Like there was
God,
probably
yeah.
like a McCain healthy choice or something. It was disgusting. But actually, like we've got some really good tasting and some really good quality convenience options now.
Totally agree. And there's so much great focus on making sure that they're a nice, balanced, nourishing meal as well. Like you said, it's not that disgusting mush stuff of McCain's that we used to get as kids.
So true.
Awesome. Well, just before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you'd like to add in that you feel that the clients might want to know, and some tips or anything else that you may not have mentioned already?
Think the thing that I like to reassure people is that it's not them. So much when it comes to particularly weight loss is that we shoulder the responsibility as an individual. That if I'm struggling with my weight, it's because I don't have enough willpower and I'm making poor choices, versus kind of the fact that actually there's a whole lot at play here, including your genetics, the environment that we live in, and then we've got, the impacts of aging and hormones. So it's really just to understand that if you are struggling, it's not you and it's got nothing to do with you as an individual. It's just that you haven't found the right strategy yet. So I think it's just to stop shouldering that blame as an individual, and just thinking it's more of a systems and strategy problem rather than an individual failing.
I'm
This has
so
been
glad that. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, you're right. I've just been on this soapbox a bit just because I've seen so many clients who are just feeling like failures themselves when in actual practice they're hitting career goals, they're managing their household, they're looking after their aging parents, like they're amazing women, but feeling like they're failing in this domain. And I think it's a real shame to be feeling like that.
Well, please stay on that soapbox because I totally agree with you. I'm so glad that you mentioned it, because it is so important that people realize that, yeah, it's not just you. It's actually a very common thing across all women at this age, because there are so many things at play. I totally agree with you. So please keep standing on that soapbox.
Which I will. I will.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Terry.
Thank you again. All right. So that wraps up another episode of the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to subscribe and share along for everybody else who's listening. We will chat to you again next week. Thanks again. Have a fabulous week. Thank you for listening to the Perimenopause and Midlife podcast. Join me next time for more honest conversations about midlife and what's possible from here.